Welcome to part two of my interview with Matthew Tavares. On part one, we talked all things jazz and his jazz group Bad Bad Not Good that he's a founder member, and then we started to talk about him moving on. So, what did you move on to? Give a little bit of a sort of a
Yeah, so
what
I
you
left
went
the
on to
group
do.
in 2019, just and then started to pursue a career in music production with like really close friend. This guy, his name's Adam Feeney, but his most people know him as Frank Dukes, or now he goes by Ging, his Chinese name. But yeah, like we met in the early days. Like we met because of Bad Bad, but literally on the first show we like Bad Bad ever played, like Adam came and we just hit it off so well, and we got a studio with him, and he was a big part of like Bad Bad's kind of path as well. And then as that was happening, we shared the studio in Toronto for like 6 years, and he started to really take off in the production sphere because that was what his dream was to do. And yeah, and then he really did it. Like it's not a lot of people know about him for some reason. He's not like as famous as like a lot of the other big producers, but I would say like as far as the 2010s go, he probably is in the top five producers in the world in terms of like number one hits,
Yeah.
streams, etc. He's just kind of more of a low key dude.
What
And
sort of hits did he have?
like Havana by Camila Cabello, and
Really?
by Post Malone. Yeah, it's crazy.
Even I know that.
Yeah, it's like like international hits. So like yeah, like we always just had a great working relationship. Like it wasn't anything contractual or whatever. It was just
Yeah.
we were just friends. Like and yeah, I just went out to LA a bunch of times and worked with him, and it's amazing. Like he really helped me in that way, and we did a lot of cool songs. We did like some stuff for Post Malone and and Taylor Swift and all the rest of it. But the main thing what's cool about my working relationship with him is that like, and I feel like you said this. I don't know if you said this on camera or off camera. We were ending the last one, but you said you can kind of hear like it's like the vibe of the songs is it's not just like it's just straight ahead pop music or whatever. Like I really feel like that's where our collaboration excelled, is that a lot of the songs we did together, like Deja Vu by Post Malone, or is like a classic example of this, like kind of like complex chord progression, interesting, like kind of weird, more lo-fi vibey production, and it definitely it felt like more, I guess, like advanced from a technical way, and a lot of the stuff we did together was like that. It felt more advanced harmonically and stuff. And of course, it's funny because almost nothing I did with him ever became like a single or anything. But a lot of it was like, I think I really stand behind like the catalog of music I produced in the past like 3 or 4 years, where yeah, it's like I think it's like really interesting pop music, and a lot of these songs are still huge, like, and these are like amazing album cuts that honestly I think are almost kind of cooler that they're under the radar. But yeah, like it was really cool. And yeah, I went on to do that, and then and also at the same time, like around 2018 I released a solo record, just because I was going through a lot emotionally at the time, and I just felt like I needed to write songs and express myself, which I had done before Bad Bad, but I really stopped doing during Bad Bad because it was so hectic touring. We played like 100 shows a year. It was crazy. Like, and as you know, 100 shows a year is like gone like 200 days a year,
Yeah, yeah.
because you're on flights and you know, it's nuts to be on like a world tour every year, emotionally, and I had no time to do anything. So I just yeah, I just started writing songs, and I put it out, and I didn't really think anything of it. Like I didn't think it was going to be some, it's not like, it's not some gigantic cultural thing, but it really is amassed like quite an audience, and weird, like kind of almost like spiritual things happened when I put it out that kind of helped get in front of people. Like Virgil Abloh, the late like designer, became like really obsessed with it and like always posted it on Instagram and stuff. And then through that, like when Kylie Jenner had like her first baby, she posted a video of them listening to my song in the background. And obviously it wasn't like the intention of the video was to show her baby, but it's like, like I probably got like 5 quadrillion spike on my traffic on my Spotify or whatever at that time. And
Well,
just
that's how
like
it
things.
works now. It used to be you had to go out and tour, go
Yeah,
around town to
exactly.
town.
And it
Now it's
really
not
sort of,
like that. There's certain people, if they just want to make you famous, then they can, can't they? It's
yeah. And so a lot of these kind of things, like the confluence of a lot of these things, and obviously coming from like the success of Bad Bad and the rest of it, like like, I'm not just saying this to appear humble. Like I had no expectation that I would become like a solo career artist or something.
yeah.
But I also have this career as a solo artist, which has been quite cool. And I just like make records, um, to me, like the solo stuff is really just about expressing like personal feelings and making music authentically and trying to express like various things that have happened in my life in a way that maybe empowers or helps make people feel comfortable. So it's kind of the
I think it's like knowing people I know have worked in production. I've been told a lot of times that there's producers that create a new sound, right? And then when that producer creates a new sound, the artists want that sound. They don't want it on the single, but they want it on the deeper cuts because it gives them that depth, doesn't it?
Yeah, like I can see that, like a little bit of depth. Yeah. And I mean,
and then he said, I'm not going to tell you who it is, but he said, then once that happens, he said they then start ringing up other people and say, can you do a production like this?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he says, and he goes, you do it a little bit like it. And then they go, no, and he says, really, they mean, can you copy that? And there's a lot of people making a career by copying.
Well, that's the kind of plague I would say of like of production is, you're right. It's like a lot of people, when you get a sound, it's like, can you redo that? And I think if you're the kind of, there are people who are producers who are into production and on pop stuff or whatever, that like they're cool with that. They're cool with repeating, and they're cool. And some people do it in an amazingly artistic way. Like I think Pharrell is an insane, like he's one of the best, but he has like a formula. Like it really, he has like sounds and all the rest of it, and he kind of works within that beautifully, like an artist does. But for me, it's like I'm just like, I almost feel like there's two different kinds of artists. You have like artists who refine one thing throughout their entire career and kind of keep on repeating it. It's like a process of refining and making it, it's like, you know, more emotional and whatever else, like the more you do it. But for me, it's like I have to never repeat myself. So even doing all the, like I was starting getting bored making stuff that was like as the end game to be for a pop song, because it's like, well, what am I going to just do? Make shit like this all my life? I want to do other stuff, you know?
So you went there, you did that pop thing, you worked with all these huge artists that my kids have heard of, right? And then you've sort of moved out of that now. What was that a conscious decision to go, right, I've had enough of this now?
Well, like COVID definitely got in the way of that too a bit, you know what I mean? Because a huge part of that was going to LA, and then I don't know, it just became incredibly, especially in Canada, the restrictions were crazy here, so it's like traveling was very difficult. And it just felt like good timing, because I really was getting disillusioned with the process. And even Adam, like, you know, the guy who like really helped me in my career in that way, like he was getting disillusioned with it. So it was almost like this double disillusionment, you know? And yeah, and I do production still, and I do like a few sessions a year, and like there's a couple like songs coming out with like pretty big artists, like, and I still connect with a lot of people I worked with in that capacity, where I'll send them kind of like almost way weirder stuff than even I did before, where it's like, okay, well, if you can somehow fit this onto a record, like a Kendrick Lamar record or something, it's like, that would be crazy, you know? So I still have relationships with people, but it's like, it's just, I don't know. I don't think I just know my life path isn't necessarily like just being a producer for hire. It's like I really do feel like, and just personally, like I don't think there's anything wrong with being a producer for hire, but for me, it's like I really do feel almost like I have this curse of being an artist, where it's like, or an entrepreneur or whatever it is, that thing of like, if I start something, and especially if it even gets successful, I almost start to get like, oh, this is like a trap now, you know? So I have to get away from it. And so I don't know, it's like, just for me, it's like constant evolution. It's like the stuff I'm working on now is like like honestly, like I'm more so the past year been more interested in just like personal growth and self-development than you know, finding some crazy new musical sound, but that often comes hand in hand. So it's like, you know,
well, if you watch the channel, you know I have this sort of basic place that I work from in terms of music, which is that and this doesn't come from an intellectual thing. It's actually, I examine the process of being creative, and I realized it was a bizarre thing that you're trying to get this sort of emotional, visceral thing out, this expressive thing out, but you also really obsessively make sure it's nailed. You know, that exactly. It's cool, but that snare drum's out of place. That one's out of place, but it sounds cool. But that one needs to budge up. Yeah. And so I realized it was like chaos and order are actually, that's what you're dealing with when you make a good track. And when you get it right, you know, that magic when you get it right, and you think, how could this be working? Because there's hardly anything there. That's like, it's greater than the sum of the parts, you know. And I realize it's because you managed to get a balance of between all those expressive things.
Yeah, it's like alchemy, you know. It's like the fundamental thing of like, you put two opposites together and then you create something.
Yeah, and it's negotiating, and we continually, as a culture and as artists, you know, in the culture we're in, you're trying to negotiate in the times that you're in. Now, I've just thought this. It's like I've gone through your career, and it's like the early, you've got Bad Bad Good, which is really instrumental. It's dealing feelings. It's like groove, all that type of stuff. That's a cool groove. That's cool. That's funny. I really love that. That's quirky. Then you've gone to the pop production, which is, I mean, and great pop music is always about what the song's about fundamentally.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think even more than what the song is about, it's about the artist.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm glad you said this. Yeah.
Oh, that's I think where people get lost. Like, I think this, and it's about the artist in the moment in time.
In the moment, exactly this. So this is what
people
don't
this is
understand.
why, like, Paul McCartney is a genius, but he's not doing what the Beatles did. Like, you think if anyone could have cracked the code of what a great song is, it'd be him, and he'd just be writing absolutely like #1 hits for the rest of his life. But unfortunately, it's like he was that person in that moment of time, and then it worked perfectly. But it's like it really is like a magical combination. And I actually think
these courses where they tell you how to songwrite, and they say, mate, you need a hook at the first 5 seconds, then you need a cool beat, and then you need to put in all this type of stuff, and then and those things are sort of true. I mean, I know those because I've done pop production and all these. People don't realize it, but that's my production.
Yeah,
I never learned how to record anything properly. I learned how to sample and remix. Remixing was the first thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And I was remixing artists like Red Dragon. I did a remix of Red Dragon, who's like a ragga artist. That's what the first time I ever worked on a major label was for a ragga remix.
Nice. Oh,
yeah. And the thing with you is that that thing about the pop song being about the story, and so many musicians, I think they get blind to that. Like virtuoso musicians, jazz musicians, they get blind to this other aspect of music. And now you seem to have put the two things together.
Well, I have a few things to say about that, like, and thanks, and I think it really, I don't intentionally do it. Just to me, it's like, I just think music isn't only one thing. So like, to touch to different things of what you said, it's like the chaos and order. Absolutely. I think that makes any great artwork, right? And I think you could even apply that to why virtuoso music doesn't sound that great. It's too much order, It's like
that's exactly
way too much order. It's like it's like I want to, like, you have to mess up for me to believe that, like, you're feeling it almost, and you can't mess up on purpose, because then that's more order. It's more aesthetic. But and like the thing about like the art, I think songs are obviously like a great vehicle for an artist, and the song does have to be like good enough, but I don't know, it's like, I think it's 99% the artist. It's like an attitude in pop music. It's like, it's the story of the artist singing the song, and it's like the same way it's an actor in a movie. It's like, if you can have someone reading the same script, and this movie is terrible or this movie is amazing, and it's like, does that script resonate with the story of the actor? So I really do think it's all about like, I don't think there is such a thing as just some like stone cold, this is a great song, this is not a great song. It's like, this is a great song for this artist, most importantly, in this moment in time, where it's going to connect to people culturally. And there's a thing, I mentioned this when we talked before. Sorry, I'll let you talk just to finish this.
It's just really inspiring. And
I talked about, like, when we talked previously about how much I love the KLF. Like Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cauty and stuff. And it's like, in the manual, like, Bill Drummond has an amazing point, which I fully ascribe to. This has always been my sentiment. It's like, if you took two people and gave them the exact same drum machine, like preset, whatever, Roland TR-808, and it played the exact same preset at the exact same BPM, one is better, because one person has more attitude who presses that start button. And it's like, I fully believe that's true. You could do a double blind experiment. And it's like, it's proven true of dance music. It's like, sometimes
what you're saying is who's pressing the button.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's important.
Who's pressing
the
button.
Anything else. It's not about like how fast it is or whatever. It's like, it's the story of the person. It's always been that way with all art, and really the art is just a manifestation of that person. So, someone who is too technically driven, I think the story it's telling me, at least, is like, this person isn't maybe vulnerable or in touch with themselves enough to take a risk. So why would I listen to them when I could listen to Blind Willie McTell or something, do something that feels like, it's like, sometimes it's like 15 bar blues in order for him to get the full statement out. But it's like, it's so perfect because it's so real. Like, that's what I like, and that's the story of him. It's someone who's being real,
People watching this video, Matthew is telling you the truth here, right? If you're an artist, right, if you're an artist and you're trying to get your tracks out and you're thinking to yourself, how can I, there's all this competition out there, there's all these tracks on Spotify, millions of tracks, how can I beat the competition? Right, the trouble is 99% of them aren't doing what Matthew's saying. And if you step back and go, what's this about? And why should people want to be interested? From the story, because it's often the story that they miss, isn't it? You know, who am I? What am I about?
The story of yourself is what I'm trying to get it back to.
Yeah,
it's all about yourself. And like, and that's the thing. It's like it leaks into the art and people can pick up on it, you know? So if, like I said, I think a big thing I have an issue with is when people make art, I can tell it's like, I don't think this person is in touch with themselves enough to be vulnerable, you know? So that's like a starting point. I think obviously, like, you know, aesthetic, non-vulnerable, like playlist ready music does get on tops of the charts and all the rest of it. I'm not saying that everything that's big is some amazing statement of this or that. It's like there absolutely is like a music mafia that does control these things, and you know, it's like that's just how it's always been. And but there's also such a place for something real, and the real thing I feel like always transcends like everything else over time.
Well, the thing with popular music is what happens is that all these formula tracks are basically a formula of some great song or a spate of great songs that came out.
Yeah,
and then it all gets formularized, and then something new comes out. It's like in the
exactly,
UK.
and then it breaks it apart, and then that becomes the zeitgeist for 5 years, and then that gets boring. And yeah, there is a formula to making pop music that I don't know. It's always been that way. It's probably been that way even like before, you know, in the 1800s when you had the etudes and stuff. I'm sure like, you know, I don't know enough. I don't know why I brought that up. I don't know enough about classical stuff to make a draw comparison there. But anyways, it's like all I'm trying to say is that the song is ultimately irrelevant. You know, is that every song is interchangeable. It's like the person who sings it and like the aesthetics of the music is being the clothing that kind of makes it contemporary. I think that's the most important thing.
And I think sometimes people who have a belief in their self-character will then find a way, and so they go, well, I've got this drum machine and I've got this mic and I haven't got, and I'll record on this, you know, 4-track that I found in the garage, you know, like, you know, whatever they do, and they have the guts to do that, and then everyone goes, oh my god, this is a new sound, because they've gone their own way. And I want that to happen back in jazz, because I think it comes from jazz.
It happens in every genre, you know. It really does. It's like it's just a cycle. Someone has to reinvent it at some point, you know. And I think it is happening, and it's always, it's like it's a gradient. It's always never just like every so often someone comes with something so brand new, like with hip hop, you know, or like dance music, like the early Detroit stuff or whatever, where it's like, this is insanity. Like, this sounds like nothing I've ever heard. But that also often comes with the technological innovation, you know. And so it's kind of two things working hand in hand, like someone's ingenuity and genius and kind of isolation in a lot of ways from what's happening outside, and also something new coming in that they can use. So I think that will happen. It's like, as technology evolves, I think there will be a new frontier of jazz music, just like.
But don't you think on technology, it's always used in the wrong way? You know, it's like people invent electric guitar so they can be louder. It's like an acoustic guitar, but it's louder.
Yeah.
And then Hendrix comes along and starts feedbacking and distorting this. And it's like samplers. Everyone know why they wanted to invent samplers, because they wanted to replicate real sounds, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Not,
you know, and then you got DJ Herkow's name is doing that, you know, back to back. And then we could do that in a sampler. The idea that you could just chop a record out and loop it round, you know, or, you know, use the synth. I mean, when I was making records back in the old days, we were using the Akai as a synthesis module more than the sample bit. You know, because the computer that, but I had to have a mate in to do this bit, you know, because it was back in, we were trying to get that.
I think it was like where you press the number interface.
Yeah, it was like
and it's a rack out unit that you control with MIDI. Like, that's the one you're talking about. Like,
yeah. So I feel that people come along that don't know what they're doing, get hold of the technology, then do their own thing with it over and over again, and then other people come out and they've got such a strong character. I've seen this over and over again. When you get to a certain age, you see everything's toddling along, and then somebody comes out. I mean, here in the UK, the big one was when Amy Winehouse came out. And then suddenly you got a big spate of singers. And actually, Adele, who's one of the biggest artists in the world, is actually come out of that. She was like one of the ones that came out in the sort of.
Yeah, I can see. I never really made that connection, but I can totally see where. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know. And then you wait, you know, and I always have a lot of respect for them. It's like Ed Sheeran, and I do have quite a lot of respect for that guy, because he's broke the mold in so many different ways in terms of pop music production, you know.
Yeah, it's so simple. It's unbelievably like it's unbelievable how popular his music is, given like how basic the parts are. You
Yeah,
know, it's like there is no drop, there is no there. It's like, and that way it's real. And I really do think like this. I'm not just trying to like blow smoke up the ass of all these pop stars or whatever, but it's like I think being a pop star, like if you were a real world like top 100 pop star, it's like I don't think people understand how difficult and how vulnerable and how like incredibly like dangerous in a lot of ways it is just to be that person. So it's like that's also part of the music, right? Like that's that feeling of immediacy and danger and stuff that's there. People might not understand it, or they think, oh, this is pop garbage, but it's like you try being that person, you
Well, they
know.
have to have a really
I'm hard
strong
to that.
charisma that cuts through, but they also have to have
Yeah,
a blankness where everyone can put themselves onto that artist as well.
exactly. Yeah,
And so when all these people putting themselves onto that artist, they then have to go through life meeting people that believe that a part of their soul is in that person, and they're
yeah.
not, you
It's
know,
being
and it's
projected on constantly. It's like being
yeah,
a beautiful person, right? It's like, oh, like, you know, or whatever. It's like, and often artists are also like very physically beautiful, but you're dealing with that
yeah.
constant projection of strangers, you know. I
But
can't imagine.
they're all
Yeah,
full of self-loathing, you see. So they're it's a big recipe. I was watching Russell Brand interview the other day, and he was talking about his addiction and all the stuff he went through. And what really struck me, he says, my wife is mindful, she is spiritual. She says she gets up in the morning, makes a cup of tea, and sits in the garden. He goes, I'm not like that. I'm a raging, massive
yeah.
self-loathing, and then thinking he's king of the world. And I thought that is what artists are like. I'm like that as well,
Oh, I have that too. Absolutely. It's like my biggest enemy my whole life has been myself. It's like no one has caused me more damage internally than the constant beratement I could give myself. I'm so much better at it now. Like so many things have helped.
If you think
As
it's
like
because you've learned to channel that into them, now you're, writing songs, this self-expression thing you're talking about in the
yeah,
story.
definitely. I think like it started with Deja Vu. It's like if it's hard for me to listen to that record because it's like I put it on the other day actually because it just recently turned 5, and it's like it's hard because it just sounds like the record of someone who hates themselves, and it is. But maybe it makes people feel less alone. But yeah, I think it's just I think it's like it sounds cliche. It's like a blessing and a curse because
Totally.
really what we're talking about at its essence is self-awareness, you know? So it's like I'm aware of myself in these ways, and the problem is that it turns into self-hatred, you know? But that self-awareness also makes I really feel like it's benefited me a million times over. It's like I just like have a crushing awareness of like everything going around me, everything that's happening, whatever, and a constant criticism of everything I do. So it's never good enough, you know? But then and I think that also what comes with this kind of thing of like, okay, I've done this. It's like people love it now or whatever. It's like I can't keep doing this. Like I have to do something different. Like mission accomplished, you know. And maybe that comes from like not wanting to be loved or something like externally, but like, yeah, I think it's also very helpful because I think it's a way more interesting life to kind of to keep growing and evolving, and that comes with sometimes a healthy sense of self-criticism, you know.
I've got a friend called Jack Jennings. I was on the phone to him just before we got into this interview, and he rang me up at a gig last night, and my friend was filming it. And at the end of the gig, my mate texts me and he goes, "This is insane about this gig." And then Jack comes on and he goes, "I didn't think I played that well. There's certain moments I played that well." And he was really beating himself up. And I had to say to him, "Look, when you do a gig, the best you can go for is average.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
hit
Yeah.
average, great. And then the next gig you might hit
Great
average, and
philosophy.
then
Yeah.
10 gigs you might go a bit above average, but you can't expect to be above average because you will always be hitting your average. And I've learned as a player, as a drummer, to go for that. So I go, I'm going to try and go here when I do a gig. I'm just going to try and
Yeah.
get in the
Like
middle.
relaxed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and hope if I'm good enough. And my daughter sings, and she had to sing at the school the other day, and I was driving there, and I said, "Look, just go for in the middle. If you can impress people when you're being average, you're a musician."
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, you have something to do. You know what I mean? Like,
if you can't, go and
yeah,
practice and get all orderly and start worrying about yourself. But it's just practice. But you need, and a lot of that is being able to sell that the emotion. It's like
yeah,
if and I knew if my daughter just sang it at 50%, she would still be able to sell the emotion, and people will pick up and go, "This is amazing," but they're not trying. And that's
Yeah,
the state that
exactly.
you're
Which
trying to.
is
It's like
cool.
when you do production and you go blah
Exactly.
blah blah. Whoa, what's happening? What's happening? And it's like, I haven't done this. God, what?
Yeah.
Quick,
I think
save it.
there's so many things to say about this. First of all, I do think that like I personally believe that performing live and like making art in private are like completely two different art forms. It's like theater versus film.
Yeah,
So it's like it requires such a different thing. It's like I do agree. Like live, it's like you almost have to fake it if you're not filming or whatever. It's like you have to get up to that like bare minimum average.
yeah,
But then the other thing I'll say is like not to get all spiritual, but I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like for me, it's like no matter how much I practice an instrument, like I've been like playing a lot of guitar the past few years. Like that's been like kind of my main thing, other than kind of got like a little burnt out on piano, like playing it so much. So like guitar has really been the thing I've been focusing on. And just some days I'll just pick it up and I'll be like, oh my God, like I am amazing. Like this is like the most beautiful thing I've ever played. It's coming through me and I'm doing stuff that's like difficult. And then other days, like I can bear, it's like I'm making mistakes playing fucking chords. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's like I don't even know where
And when it's
where the
going well,
excellence
it's
comes
like
from.
you've
It's
actually
a
just
conduit.
discovered the instrument again for the first time. You go, oh,
Yeah,
that sounds amazing. What if I try and play wrong notes? Oh my God, they sound amazing too. It's like
exactly.
that
Yeah.
feeling, isn't it? And oh my God, this is really brilliant. Oh, I love the guitar.
But I'm saying is it comes from something. I almost feel like that excellence, that thing above average. It's something you can't control. It comes. I believe it comes from something beyond me. I'm not even saying it's God or whatever. It's just like it feels like I can't control that mind state I'm in, where when I sit down and it's like this is real connection with the instrument. There's no amount of meditating or tea or whatever, sitting in the grass in the morning that's gonna consistently get me to that place. Sometimes the opposite. Sometimes I'm feeling terribly emotional or vulnerable, and then I'm right there when I'm playing. But sometimes the vulnerability, it's too vulnerable, and it's like I don't even want to make music. I hate myself, you know what I mean, or whatever it is. So
I've realized something what you've just said then, because if I've got a gig, I will practice the stuff, make sure I got it nailed. And when the gig is going well, it's because I've been out on tour. You get 3 or 4 dates in, and then suddenly it kicks in, and you find yourself, you're playing it. You don't have to think about it. You know what's going on.
exactly.
When I'm in my studio making tracks, I'm almost like trying to catch myself out. So I really don't know what I'm doing. So I will never do a drum part. I will never learn. It's like I will never learn the part first.
Yeah.
I'm in there before I know what's going on, because I want to try and get that instant where the groove hits me and I don't know what I'm doing, and I just naturally whatever
Yeah,
wants to come out.
immediacy.
And they're two completely different things. They're two completely different states. And because I really hate it when you go for something, third time you go for it, and you go, it's not happening. You have to give up, because that 20th take will be perfect, but it will not.
It'll be terrible. Yeah, there'll be no immediacy.
Yeah,
I think that people don't like. That's just the word I use for it. At least is that like when I'm producing someone, it's like always in the back of my mind. It's like try to capture the kind of first and like thing, like try to do things in as few takes as possible on every instrument, on everything. It's like even if there's mistakes, because like people can feel when something is immediate and real, and otherwise it turns into being like acting. And I don't mean like acting like an art form, but I mean like acting in the bad way, where it's like I am singing this part like, and this is the 50th time, and I don't believe it, and it's just like whatever, the mechanics of my mouth moving, or I'm playing the guitar and it's like perfectly in time, but there's nothing behind it. There's no driving like force. There's no emotional energy. Like you can. There's this author I really love, Scott McClanahan. I don't know. He's like more of an indie author.
Yeah, I'm not very good on
He wrote
authors.
this amazing book called The Sarah Book, but he also is just an awesome writer. But I just watched this interview with him a couple of days ago, where he talked about like his goal with art, and paraphrasing. So if he watches this, like I don't know, hopefully I'm not misrepresenting him, but so he really kind of says like in writing, there's kind of a compression of emotion, a compression and expansion of like emotional energy, right? And I really think that's true with like all art form, where it's like you have to get the emotion in the thing, in the recording, so that way when someone plays it back, like that's why I love the 61 Village Vanguard John Coltrane. I know he was feeling something, and I can feel it every time I play that recording. So if you're just playing something for the sake of it, well, what are you even doing? Like you're not really benefiting art as a whole. It's like you got to put your soul in it. It has to be emotional, so that way people have a reason to listen to it. Does that make sense?
I'm going to get really deep now, because this is an amazing conversation. I interviewed Jason Marsalis
I haven't watched that yet. I've been meaning to.
And Jason was a hell of an interview.
Yeah.
And I had an idea of the Marsalis family as being like, they're jazz royal family, and they've all got
exactly,
their
yeah.
Winton's got the big throne, Bramford's got one, Jason's got a little throne, but they and they sit there, saying about, about the great art form that is jazz, you know, and they open up the Oracle and look about Buddy Bolden. You know, I felt it was like that. And then when I spoke to Jason, it was incredible, the interview. But the other thing I noticed, his voice, the way he talked, you could tell that this isn't some sort of royal family person. This is someone who's grown up in New Orleans, right in the world of jazz, and this is the coolest,
he is jazz,
funkiest guy, and you could hear it in his voice. I just could listen to his voice, and I can remember I can't remember who said this, but they said they were in Africa once, and this guy was walking down the street. He looked at him, and he was just walking so relaxed and so cool, and he got everything together. And this kid ran out in front of a car, and he swept down, picked the kid up, put him on the stage, but all within this thing.
Yeah, it's like that, flow state. Yeah, it's like that,
and it's that feeling. It's that, and when you, that New Orleans thing, it's in the culture, isn't it? And what it is, it's just a relaxed, like immediacy. It's like there's no strain or tension.
Well, I also think there's no pretension around music in those cultures. It's like it's not like something you're using to impress people. It just is, you know. I mean, I didn't grow up in New Orleans, but it's like, to me, I just feel like when I hear music like that, like or jazz music from like the prime era of jazz or whatever it is, right? It's like, it just, I can't express it. Maybe it's hard to express semantically, but it's like it's just music. It's like, it is the thing. It's already there. It's like, there's no removing, there's no intellectualization. There's like, you can think about your chords and all the rest of it, but it's like, not like such a serious kind of intellectual like statement about like, oh, are people going to think I'm cool or hip or this or that? And of course, it's like the coolest, hippest shit ever. It comes from when you don't even think about it.
That's exactly, and that's what, and I think that's actually wound into the culture of jazz. It's actually in there.
Yeah,
people like you and me that are more sort of, we've got our thing. I think both you and me have got this. It's more, there's a bit of an indie thing as well.
For sure, absolutely.
So I've got the same thing. Even though I'm a big jazz fan, I came to fruition in the post-punk era, came up in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a certain thing where I do want to button the top bit up.
Yeah, be a mod or whatever. Yeah,
like, and then have a cool haircut. You know, there's that bit because that's my thing, and I talk in this sort of rapid way, and it's like this, and it's a lot more like this, you know. And on the drums, I have a deep connection with that groove thing. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me is that there's a bass player. I'm not going to try and remember now. Well, he came over to the UK, and I met up with him, and he was Zigaboo's bass player from the Meters, and he's also the standing bass player for Tower Power. And we got to jamming, and it was like someone said, "Why don't you just get up and jam?" It was in a class, and I played, and I sat there, played, and at the end he turned around and said, "I can play with this guy." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Because he's got the groove. He's got that groove." And I was like, amazing. "Oh," because that's the best
compliment. Yeah, exactly.
And
I guess like to kind of clarify even my point, like even further with like the whole like this thing we're talking about, is that like even like giving your example of like buttoning your tie up or whatever. I think that's the kind of plague of, not plague, it's extreme, but like it's a negative thing to think about music as being an aesthetic kind of amplifier for your life. It's like, I just think when music is pure, it's like, it's just music, you know, and you're just playing music and it's all the rest of it. And it's like, if you get too deep into what it means to play it for you as an image-based thing, then it becomes more about propaganda. It's more like Andy Edwards propaganda. I'm great at drums, you know, it's part of the story. It's part of the ego. And I think that's really not what music is for. So when I mean that, like that early jazz or like New Orleans music, the way you're describing it is just music, I mean that like the most amazing way. It's like, it is the peak. It's like hearing, you know, guitar music from like Agadaz or something, or, you know, like Brazilian samba, like the really early stuff, like, or bossa nova, I mean, sorry. Like, or something. But anyways, it's like, but it's just like so pure. It's like almost untouchable, you know. It's like people aren't making it for the wrong reasons. It's like there's a purity to it. I feel like
we're down to 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was going to say this earlier. I thought I ain't going to say this. It'll sound too pretentious, but I'm going to say it now anyway. I've spoken to a lot of musicians. There's a lot of musicians that think that our consciousness is not inside us. There's like a much bigger universal consciousness,
union collective conscious kind of thing.
And I'm quite a logical, materialistic type person. But when I talk to these guys, they're very clever guys. There's a guitarist I work with called Fayanzek, and he really, his music is almost like it's about this sort of worldview of this universal consciousness, and it's passing through us. And when you get that right, you actually access something that's outside you. And when I talk to him and he starts to tell me what consciousness is, I go, yeah, well, I can't tie it down to being inside me.
Yeah,
it's really weird. And that then you start to think, well, do planets or suns have consciousness? Do trees have consciousness? I don't think they have a consciousness like me. But is there a beingness inside a tree where they sit there being a tree? And
or a cell or a piece of dirt or whatever, right? It's like,
and just because I can't imagine what that is like, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be like my consciousness. And you almost feel like the universe is there's an upwards movement to the universe, and what's it moving up to? I just don't know. And I think this is the strange thing about music, whether you're atheist, agnostic, or religious or spiritual. That is a definite aspect of music. I think that's what you're talking about. Is accessing that way. It's not about you anymore.
No, exactly. And I really am a firm believer in that. And I mean, these things you're saying of like, is the tree conscious? I mean, these are like Gnostic, Hermetic ideas from forever ago. It's like this is kind of almost early life philosophy. And I'm not saying that means it's true, but I definitely am a believer in the kind of collective consciousness, like something larger than me. And like I said earlier, it's like I can sit down and sometimes a C chord is just a C chord, but sometimes it's like a window to a whole world that becomes a song in 5 minutes. And if I'm just a rationalist materialist, then I could say, well, I could just game making music and get to that feeling of making a song all the time because it's just a chemical process in my brain. But I don't believe that. I think it's like, it's so
but
much
even if it is, it's still it doesn't solve the thing, because
I just don't
process
know.
in the brain is you've got to switch off something. What are you switching off? And people say, oh, you're switching your ego off. What the hell's that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why psychology is such an interesting science, because it's also like an art. It's like, it's impossible to really prove these things. You have to have just faith in these ideas. Like, and I don't know, I think it feels like it benefits me personally just to believe, like, when I'm really making something, it's coming through me. And I've said that
we've got 1 minute. When we had the break, I went and grabbed 5 albums. I thought we'll get a bit of structure in. I bought 5 albums, and we were going to talk about. I got Public Enemy, the 12-inch cut. I was going to show you that. I got Talking Heads.
Beautiful, classic.
There's a Riot Going On, Sly and the Family Stone.
Amazing.
I got Bill Laswell's Material.
Hell yeah, I haven't heard that one, but
that's incredible. And I got Tin Drum. Right, and because I went and got them, I have shown them, Tin Drum by Japan. But the thing is, we didn't go there. And where we've ended up, we had no, I was just thinking, God, we're talking about trees having consciousness now.
Exactly. Well, I mean, why not? It relates to music, Yeah.
It's going to shut down any minute. Shall we say bye-bye?
Well, it's been so amazing talking. Yeah, honestly.
You want to come back again?
For one more round?
No, in give it a few months.
I would love to. Yeah,
I'm getting a whole bunch of weird characters. I'd like to put them together so we could do double ups. Let's say bye before it goes. Say bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Yeah,
we'll see you again, Matt. It was brilliant.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy.